news SEO is different from classic SEO in that there are multiple touch points and multiple places in Google's entire ecosystem where news appears. The two main sources of traffic for most news publishers would be the top stories carousels that you see on regular search results and Google's Discover feed. The news.google.com vertical is a little bit popular, but usually, we're talking single digit percentages of traffic, like 4 or 5% of traffic for most news publishers will come from the news.google.com vertical. And the same applies to the news tab on regular search results. That's only a couple of percent of traffic for most publishers. The bulk of traffic will come from either when a news article is shown in a top stories carousel and news carousel on regular search results, both on mobile search results and desktop search results, and the Discover feed that users have on their smartphone that is built into Android phones by default, and that iPhones can access through the Google app, and they have that installed on their phone. Those are the main contact points for readers with news sources. And that's where most of the traffic comes from. And slightly different rules for both. Optimizing for top stories, it's still a search-based ecosystem. So the headline needs to match the keyword, the search term that people are searching for. Google needs to show a news box for that search in the first place, which depends on whether Google thinks it's a newsworthy topic, depending on whether it's appearing in a lot of different news stories on a lot of different news websites and the amount of articles being written about that topic at that particular time. And Discover is a very different animal in that I call it searchless news because it's very much interest based. People aren't searching for specific topics when they scroll to their Discover feed, but Google is surfacing content based on what it knows about that particular user's interests and what kind of content they like to read and what kind of websites they like to engage with. So that gives you a very different dynamic in terms of optimizing for Discover. It's much more based on high levels of engagement, of focusing on specific interests, specific topics that might align with both your own editorial expertise as a publisher and what your readers like to read about. And there's a bit more room for Discover for things like slightly clickbaity headlines. You don't want to go overboard and make them pure clickbait, but you can have a little bit of sensation or extravagance in your headlines, which you cannot have in regular news because that's still very much based on keywords and topics in terms of where Google sees the content ranking in your headlines. So that changes the dynamic again. Whether you optimize for Discover or you optimize for news is a slightly different dynamic there too. And you probably tend to do that based on the categories of content on your website.